Hello. I want to thank you everyone for coming here. You all asked for 50 OCs, and I delivered on Blue Sky. Whether it was out of genuine interest and curiosity in what I have created over the years, or if you just wanted to see if I could deliver, well, I did. I'm standing on my soapbox, but yes, I did think about making a playlist for OCs and stuff like that, but there are a bunch of OCs that just I don't have songs associated with them, at least yet. I have a lot more than what I listed on Blue Sky. Some I just don't have art for, many I've forgotten. For this format, I'm gonna read off what I wrote on the Blue Sky thread, and then kind of expand on that. And I even made myself a semi-janky, semi-professional PowerPoint for all this. I suppose I should start with Kalen. They're not just my Artsona. Kalen was a young man from Earth, isekai'd to Andorra to save his friend Rihanna and the land itself from a returning evil. During the final encounters, a miscast and power spell turned him into a frog. They prefer it. Kalen was originally a human from Earth. Yeah, he was that's normal kid. He went just like in school and whatnot, and one day he was approached by a mystical little dragon lizard thing named Ogren, who offered him power to protect his friend from it. He was somehow coerced into it. I don't know. I honestly don't remember if he just agreed or if he put up a fight. It's been a bit since I've really thought about it, really. He gained the power of the Dragon Knight, which at the time was kind of the name of the story I was kind of going for at the time. And conveniently, like any good kind of anime setup, it was around that time that the force of evil did start trying to get Rihanna in the form of a hooded figure known simply as Scout. Kalen used the power of the Dragon Knight to transform and defeat them. And there was in my head there was planned a bunch of little Monster of the Week encounters until one of them finally captured Rihanna and took her back to Andorra. And Ogren used his power to transport Kalen there as well. And Kalen went on an adventure to save Rihanna, and then as well as Seizura and Lime, who were also captured, before making their way towards the evil Lord's castle. Because the whole situation was that Rihanna, Lime, and Seizura were going to be sacrificed in order to resurrect an ancient evil that was sealed away for many, many years. And when they arrived, they found a man named Lord Darsel. Originally, during the final battle, it was a battle between them, and then they found out that he wasn't actually the evil they needed to fight. It was a being called Lord Galrithian, who was still in the Netherrealm, which is kind of like the negative space, kind of similar to where Queen Beryl was in Sailor Moon. And the party ends up venturing into the Netherworld to fight Lord Galrithian and what remains of his retinue. It is also there that they meet Deladia. They defeat Deladia, and she is then abandoned by her father, so she joins the group in an effort to defeat him. They do, and that's where the kind of story originally ends. During this final battle, Rihanna tries to empower Kalen to give him more strength, and it's what turns him into a frog. This is actually close to what I used to draw him with, like the original Kalen, but more like jeans or leather pants and no scarf. I think I gave him a shield too. It's several years now after defeating Lord Galrithian, and that's kind of where I want to take things. What is happening right now? I feel but in a more broader sense, it's kind of Kalen's journey is really my journey, because he went through changes, I'm going through changes, and Like, for a long time, I was kind of hiding away, and so was Kalen, because for like many years, he didn't have like a presence in my art. And it has to do with like trying to figure out characters changing and like which changed the narrative. And at the time, I didn't know what to do with Kalen because I guess I didn't know what to do with myself, really. And I guess some of that is going to hopefully make more sense as we get to more characters. This brings us to Rihanna Magus. Born human, she was taken to Andorra where it was revealed she was their scion of magic. Specifically, wild magic. This has caused her to become a gnome, a goblin, a froblin, a fuzzy gob, and now a fuzzy gnome. She may continue changing as she seeks her true self. Originally, Rihanna was a human born on Earth, but she had naturally green hair, which was a source of animosity because that's not natural in real life. Sadly, this isn't an anime. But she did have at least one friend in Kalen. She was captured and brought to Andorra, where she was revealed to be the scion of magic. And there are 4 scions, we'll cover each of them before we kind of explain what all that means. Before, I had no real kind of in-character explanation as to why Rihanna was suddenly not human. Out of character, she became a gnome simply because one day I decided, what if I draw her as a gnome? And I liked it. So I kept drawing her as a gnome. And it stuck for about probably a good 10 years or so. I saw like the surge of like goblin characters, and I was like, what if goblin? And so a goblin Rihanna was born. And that lasted for a couple years until like maybe 2002-ish. I realized I was using Rihanna, Kalen, like a different version of Kalen, because there was frog version of Kalen that was bald, basically bald. But yeah, I had Kalen, Rihanna, and Ashley as like representations of me, and I thought, since Rihanna is the most like one that's been kind of developing, maybe she is me, so let's use her as a base and combine the 3 together, as I kind of explained in that one comic that I did earlier this year. But now it's kind of being retconned to be that each form she's taken is another form she has taken while kind of learning to control her magic. She just basically, while she transforms into some new creature or new form. I feel like she may transform again at some point. I don't know when or what she will be, but one of the constants is that she will always have green hair. And this little floof at the back. I don't know what it is, but I really like it. It's always been like a part of her design. And then we have Seijura. Seijura Sky, angel and scion of light. Raised to be a pure knight, she struggled with the idea of being the bearer of light. She realized light comes from within and abandoned her status, choosing a life of music as the vocalist for the band Black Rain. So, Seijura is a character in flux, and honestly, I could say every character right now. These first 10 are definitely in flux right now, because I'm honestly still kind of finalizing Seijura's design. It is closer to the right side, this one with the multicolored hair, and her original story was that she was a member of a winged race that was honestly basically a carbon copy of the winged people from Ogre Battle. Albeit maybe with a bit more complex like caste system. Complete copy, complete with like the even floating island city that they came from and stuff. And I realized that copying a bit too much, and she was basically a cleric for a church that was very thoughts and prayers approach to things. Like, even though there was like healing magic and stuff, it was We don't pray to gods. We pray for you. That is going to be explained because there is Andorra does have a bit of history, but I hope like getting through the major characters and then kind of circling back towards like the history I have for Andorra will make things easier to understand. But sick of the kind of passive approach, she decided to become. This is basically after the events of we're fighting the Lord Galrithian. She wanted to find her place. She ended up getting together with Azimuth and Cyan to form a band and to spread light in a different way. Being the bearer of light isn't just producing illuminations. It is kind of fostering the light inside of your hearts and stuff like that. And she wants to be able to do that. As a character, she still does have a lot to refine, because for the longest time, she was probably one of the most neglected. Next to Lime, honestly. Actually, probably even more so. Originally, there was a little hint at her and Kaylin getting together for no reason other than it's the hero and the kind of angel-y character. I was a teenager at the time. It just didn't go anywhere, so she just kind of fell into the sidelines as I kind of developed other characters. So, and I really do want to try and get her story sorted out. Who is she, what she is doing, where she comes from. Now, on the other side of things, we have the Lady Galrithian. Funny you should say that, because when I was struggling to figure out things with them, there was some BDSM kind of stuff drawings and stuff that happened. They're not very good, and they will definitely not be shown on Twitch, sadly. Maybe some other time. But yes, it was very much a situation where the Lady was the one in control, because she had a greater mastery over her side of things, because in essence she was centuries older, which we'll get to in a bit. The Lady Galrithian, scion of darkness and daughter of Emperor Andros Galrithian, who sought to rule Andorra with an iron fist. After being betrayed, she helped destroy her father. Empowered by the goddess of shadow Delnore, at a young age, she has since subsumed the goddess and taken her mantle. The deal with the Galrithians is that they had control of a forbidden artifact for a death god named Nethron. I'm not very good at naming gods, and they wanted more power, of course. So they found out that there was a tomb where a broken and forgotten goddess named Delnore was, the goddess of shadow and former consort for Nethron. So they performed a ritual that basically imbued the Lady with Delnore's power. And over time, Delnore just kind of gave in, let the Lady have control, because it's very unfortunate when you're a god, because then you're immortal, and being immortal and constantly in pain kind of sucks. So she'll kind of welcome this, and this is kind of an amalgamation of her original story and a story I kind of adapted for this tabletop version of the Lady that I played a few years ago, where that's exactly more or less what happened. Although her father wasn't an emperor, she was an evil businessman, basically. But but they did run a pharmaceutical company and stuff like that, so extra evil. And honestly, I think her origin kind of floundered a bit, it's flip-flopped a lot during her evolution. There were things where, before the whole goddess thing, it was she gained her powers from candle setup, sort of like the Green Ranger. She because she was born frail. She had hundreds of years to practice honing her powers because she and her family were in that nether realm for like who knows how long, hundreds of years. But time works differently, so she was essentially immortal there. She basically remains an evil force within the world of Andorra. I mean, much more controlled evil force than her father was. She considers herself a necessary evil. She has gone through like a lot of different changes, to physical changes. Like this one on the right is kind of a better example of her original form. The one on the left here is kind of like what I'm kind of going with now. But Goddess Del Nori didn't really have this minus the next stuff, because I was playing around with ideas and I haven't made any new art, so because she's gonna just be, because I think I was playing with the idea of subsuming like the imagery of her sister, which we'll get to later. Del Nori, up until recently, didn't have a form, and she was just kind of a shadowy figure, basically. But in like the tabletop game, Deladia acquired a minion in the form of Mutt, a creature that was formerly a wolf-wearer, that she basically transformed into a minion, her own minion. Whether he could still turn into a man or not was unknown, but he spent his during game he spent his entire time as a dog, like a giant shadowy dog. So I kind of came up with my own headcanon that Del Nori was kind of a wolf creature herself. Yeah. We'll come to Mutt in a bit, because I decided to include him too. Next we have Cyan Catan. Cyan Catan, Scion of Might. Being the, relatively speaking, oldest amongst the group, she sometimes acts the party mom. Who likes to party. She also acts as the drummer for Black Rain. Cyan is actually one of my older OCs. Like, older than any of the other characters so far. Like, half a decade. Because before I started making all these fantasy characters, I made like, furry characters kind of based off the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff. And Cyan was one of them. She's interesting in that she was like a replacement for another OC that made a resurgence later. I'm not even sure why I decided to change the two from one to the other, but it just started happening. And she was originally the character Susie, but for some reason I just decided like I didn't want to draw Susie anymore, and I made Cyan as kind of like a replacement. Like she replaced like her status in relationships and stuff like that. And then like I even had like commission work for with other OCs and stuff like that, as like if these two had a baby, what would it look like and stuff like that. When it comes to her background, she is kind of a blank slate. I think a lot of them are, because honestly backstories are hard to do. Before I kind of decided to make her the Scion of Might here, and I had put her into a wrestling comic where she was like the Lancer type. She wasn't the champ, but she was the former champ, basically, who was kind of the mentor to the upcoming champ, which is kind of where she is right now. But now again, she is kind of there to give advice and kick butt. Despite her diminutive size, she is 4'8". She is a small ass kicker. Now, next we have Taylana, who is actually going through a art change, a visual upgrade. I should have and this is besides the one other art I posted on Blue Sky, which I do not think is Twitch appropriate, so This is like the only art I've really got of her new form, which is embracing like the original idea that she is a chameleon fur. For the longest time, she was just like a nondescript lizard person. And now we're going back to the... kind of trying to go back to the chameleon shape now that I have like a better confidence in my own abilities and whatnot. Taylana had an abusive childhood and took to pit fighting as a means to channel her anger. She was discovered by Cyan, who took her under her wing and helped her refine her techniques. Taylana now acts as a bodyguard for Black Rain. And this is basically an adaptation of like her original story, where instead of like pit fighting, she took up like the original story where she took up pro wrestling with at kind of the urge of her friend Ashley. She has had like her own kind of evolution and stuff where it's like I didn't know what to do with her, because it's like I'm trying to combine things into one realm. It's like, because I think at the time I didn't realize lizard folk were a thing. So it's like, oh, she isn't a lizard. She is an elven druid that tried to transform into a dragon and got stuck halfway. Then went a little crazy. That was her like early 2000 version. And then I realized, oh, yeah, this is silly. This is overcomplicating things. Also, she's a lesbian. Because for like during that brief point, she was like, I shipped her with like another OC, Lanny, who at that time, in my efforts to make turn all my characters into fantasy characters, was a member of the doppelganger race, even though he didn't really actually do the things that a doppelganger did. He was just kind of tall and bald and all that stuff. And I think it was just like my attempts at to explain things without really understanding things myself. Yeah, I guess I should go back and talk about like the scions. What are the scions? These are four mortals that basically have godlike powers, and they are meant to kind of provide a balance to Andorra in the god's absence, because Andorra itself was created by a bunch of gods getting together and saying, we don't have our own pantheon or anything. Let's get together and make our own world and rule it together. And so they did, and it was fine at first, but as time went on, some gods grew kind of boastful and about their creations and stuff, and infighting occurred. Infighting soon led to clashes where each god used their own creations to fight each other, and basically. And it led to an event called the Great War. Armies of each of the gods like just duking it out, and it wasn't until like some of the more neutral gods kind of stepped in and said, stop this. They formed a pact that said, this is out of hand. We need to take a step back and let the mortals live their lives. So they basically made a pact of non-involvement that most of them are still honoring. The one problem is that even after they were gone, they left various artifacts behind that had portions of their powers, like Emperor Galrithian with the object of Nethron. There was Azimuth, who had the bracer of the dragon god Balin. Balin was his father. But yeah. Azimuth Crosswing once put on a bracer that belonged to the dragon god Balam, and has been regretting it since. Use a conduit to seal away an evil, spending several years as a lizard, and just ain't able to remove the thing. In an effort to create some control of his life, he formed Black Rain. Azimuth is kind of was originally sort of the kind of reluctant mentor. He was the hero who had already done all the heroing, in his own way. He had a fairly fleshed out background. He was born to a elven mother and human father. He lived with his mother in the elven village, where he wasn't really treated well because of his half-breed nature. Disgruntled with the fact that he didn't have the magical prowess that his mother had, or the fierce might that his father had, he ran away from home and ended up being taken in by a rogue troop where he learned his trade and stuff. And it was through treasure hunting expedition where he found the gauntlet of Balam, and try to look cool in front of a girl. He put the bracer on without knowing what it was, and it became fused to him. It being a object of great power, he was basically used as a conduit to seal away Emperor Galrithian and his troop, because they were considered too powerful to be fought head-on at the time. It did stupid things when cute girls are watching. Being used as a conduit at first seemed to have killed him, but it instead actually resurrected him as a small lizard that was called Ogren. Yeah, he existed as that for several years until he was sent to Earth to find Kaelin. I don't think there wasn't any real criteria. It was just oh, he's friends with the Scion of Magic. But give him the power to fight evil and stuff like that. So Azimuth did, and once they returned to Andorra, he was blessed with a rebirth back into his old self. And I just realized I completely glossed over a very important thing with Rihanna. Both helps and makes things more complicated, as that she was the Scion of Magic because her mother was the previous one. How the Scion can function outside of Andorra, I don't know. That is a glaring plot hole that I was a teenager at the time and didn't have a lot of creative critiquing peers and stuff like that. So it just kind of stuck there. But yeah, Azimuth is also unique in that he was a big part of my online identity for a long time. In online games and art channels and stuff like that, Azimuth was my pen name. As his character kind of evolved in my head I kind of realized how kind of sleazy and manipulative he is. I realized that just isn't me, and I had to distance myself from that, which is where we came to Gnome Draw, my previous name. Anyways, we have Vi. Vi is Taylana's childhood friend. Usually quiet and shy, she was often picked on for her small size. When Delata came to her with an offer of power, Vi eagerly accepted and is now the goddess's apprentice. Vi was originally an adoptable I got some years ago because I saw an axolotl being sold, and I was I want an axolotl. I'll get this and kind of build it into an OC, which is how Vi was formed. And she has definitely changed. She definitely does not look like her original adoptable form, which I still flip-flop on how I want to draw, and will probably continue to flip-flop on how I draw. Before being restructured for the Andorra world, she was basically a minor character in my wrestling comic, where she was kind of the in-character was a snobbish, cocky heel, where in real life she was this kind of very shy, do not talk to me, I will cry sort of anxiety-ridden girl. I realized that Ashley felt like too much of a self-insert into the comic. I decided that it would be retconned, that it would be her it would be Vi and Talon as a tag team at the start. And that's kind of where their friendship started. And it's still and like the lore for that is still kind of being developed. She is still the very shy, kind of grumpy goth, and she still has scars that she hides with long sleeves. I feel like that is a part of her, even if it isn't like it's not like something that is like widely talked about. Next, we have October. October is a shape-shifting eldritch being from the Netherrealm with an unknown amount of power. If asked how she came into Lydia's service, she'll answer, because I felt like it. Both seem to be good job of keeping the other in check. October is my attempt at making a sort of Halloween-themed creature. And she has had, this is like her third form, basically. Originally, she was a kind of, like an anime cat girl with, like, big furry limbs and a beast tail. And then she evolved into a black cat with orange hair and kind of glowing red eyes. And then a few years ago, I actually came across another adoptable, which was advertised as a Halloween-colored lemur. And I decided, let's use that. So I bought that adoptable, and it became the new form of October. October is one of the many actual residents of the Netherrealm that are from there. Like, the Netherrealm is meant to be like sort of a prison dimension, but there are creatures that were born there. And as much as things like this can be born, she is probably older than us all, and will probably continue to exist even long after the world is gone. Right now, she is on Andorra having fun, and it causing as much mischief as she can. Maggie is another of Deladia's minions. Likes being called cute. She says she was a cam girl in a former life, but given Andorra doesn't have that sort of technology, no one is sure what she means. And it is actually allusion to the original version of Maggie, which was a fully living possum girl that was a cam girl. And the art of that version of her is definitely not safe for Twitch, unfortunately. On the side, she was going to be basically Vi's out of character roommate. The two shared an apartment together, and it led to hijinks and stuff like and shenanigans and stuff like that. Being a cam girl was her profession, and she liked to tease Vi by trying to get her to join and stuff like that. Moving on from the wet wrestling comic idea, I did decide I wanted to try and do like a monster girl with like a skull face, and I kind of basically chose Maggie as the base. So like her history, her like new in-game history is a bit mysterious at the moment, because when I created Andorra and the whole story took place, it was a time before cam girls even existed. So like even those from Earth wouldn't know what a cam girl is. And again, Andorra doesn't have like cameras and all that stuff. So it's a fantasy realm. So it's almost breaking the fourth wall. Alright, then we have Glenwick. Glenwick is a frog plush Rihanna made when she was younger. He somehow followed her to Andorra even though she didn't have him when she was taken. He radiates a menacing aura. He will not be denied. When I got into the online thing, like getting to like EverQuest and stuff, I joined like a fan forum where I started role-playing as Rihanna, and when she was still a human. And it's also at this point where I started getting into D&D. And since in-game Rihanna was a wizard, I figured I should make a familiar for her. That's where Glenwick was created. Originally, he was a frog, albeit a frog with piranha teeth. which led to a lot of silly things and little roleplay things. Because he was a carnivorous being that just ate and ate. Then he was a tiny, angry rain frog that breathed laser beams. After I made the transition to her into a gnome, I was trying to restructure like how the thing started out. Like, I was moving away from the whole Scion stuff, and it was like, and the connection with like the other characters other than Kaylin. And it was the idea that Rihanna was kind of by herself and wanted another friend, so she made Glenwick, and it had a sort of consciousness of its own somehow. And like, it's funny because I still don't know what is in. I can't even tell you what's inside of Glenwick. It most likely comes from the Netherrealm as well. There was a time where when I was VTubing as Rihanna, that he was going to be sort of a jail. Like this little brooch here that both he and Rihanna had were like containing an evil, which would have been like the physical manifestation of Rihanna's fears, which for a brief moment was actually October. That story just didn't really feel right to tell, and I kind of scrapped that. And Glenwick kind of exists as a being that is omnipresent. He doesn't exactly do anything, but he just makes people uneasy with him being around. Lime is the former Scion of Strength. She lost her title after being beaten by Cyan. She now resides in her home village in the Terrazon Forest, where she acts as the village shaman. Lime was one of the original 4 Scions, yes. But, as I said earlier, I did not have a lot going for her. Nothing really seemed to click. For a while, when I was working on the wrestling comic, I had restructured her as a sort of antagonistic, or maybe tweener type wrestler called the White Tiger, even though she is brown, which is actually kind of a running theme with her and another character. And like, I just never really had anything. I couldn't really figure out what to do with her other than the fact that she was, as Scion of Strength, she had incredible rage. She, unlike Cyan, who has incredible calm with strength, with being the Scion. And getting rid of the mantle of being Scion has actually been a great kind of relief to Lime, because she just couldn't handle the stress of having unfathomable strength. And I just decided it was time basically retire her in an out of character sense, like retire her and try to restructure things. Because there's not, like I said, there wasn't really a lot that I had for her even after all this time. So like, it's good to kind of go back to ideas and build on them, but sometimes the ideas just aren't there, so you need to move on. Next, we have Apricot. Apricot is a mysterious druid that lives in the swamp. A swamp that didn't exist until she came there. She offers boons for a price. Apricot was originally a member of this custom race I made called Fuzzy Lizards. The criteria of this race was eyes closed or covered and a color palette based off their fruit name. Apricot is the only one I actually kept. Other fuzzy lizards I created included pomegranate, lime, which was an attempt at redesigning lime previously discussed. There was guava, the token male, and there was kiwi, the tiny one, and watermelon. There was a blueberry, but I don't think I ever gave that one a full, like, reference. And there was also one that was commissioned, Dragon Fruit. After it, I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do with these fuzzy lizards, so I kind of dropped the idea and kept Apricot as, like, the sole thing. And now instead of, like, a fuzzy lizard, she is just like she is basically like a lizard folk type creature. Lizard folk, Yanti, whatever you want to call it. Snowbell, or just Snow, is a former slave/pet that showed aptitude for magic and came to be the servant of Hecate. This was a D&D character that was basically the champion of an Olympic god, and sadly not the big muscle mommy of Hades 2. This Hecate was a being that existed simultaneously as a child, a maiden, and a crone. So the thing is, she was an orphan found by an eccentric wizard who kind of raised her as a pet because he doesn't really have good social skills, and then she's actually smart and knows how to do magic, and started treating her like a person. So she's got a very weird upbringing, and one of her little quirks was basically talking in third person. She would refer to everyone by their name. I would have liked to have done more with her in the game, but it sadly had the game just kind of petered out. Imp is another D&D character. Erring on the side of caution, I didn't decide not to use this bust instead of like the image I used on Blue Sky, just because of the excessive cleavage. Imp is a gnomish tiefling of the Beelzebub lineage. Raised in the street, she always on the lookout for some quick cash and a good time. Imp is definitely a character I would love to have played more than just the one shot we had used her in. Narita Breeze, when I was like making this slideshow, this PowerPoint, I couldn't find the image I used on Blue Sky again, so we used this one instead. Which I sadly don't like as much, but it's still about the same, except for the ear stuff. But yeah, Narita Breeze is a young woman who was born with water-controlling abilities. It was discovered she had a lineage with a long-lost race of aquatic beings. She decided to live among them and eventually changed it to look like them. Yeah. Narita Breeze was like my first of many mutants and mastermind characters. And on the surface, she was functionally like Katara from The Last Airbender. She controlled water. Her hero name was Tsunami, but she was from Wales because I was just all over the place with it. I didn't know it was my first superhero character, and I just didn't know what to do. So I ended up kind of throwing some random stuff together, and it somehow actually worked. She basically became sort of, I wouldn't say the team mom, but the team glue, the person that kind of helped hold the team together, because she was someone that really went with the flow, as it were. And like originally, the game ended with a fight against a Galactus equivalent being. I just decided I wanted to do something in my own kind of thing with her. Just making my characters my own, because there was like a lot of relationship stuff with like an ex that I kind of wanted to separate myself from. Not because of the relationship ended badly, but it's just didn't feel right kind of keeping it like that. And now we go on to something completely different, because I had no order in which I kind of posted these characters in. Just like, oh, there's a character I haven't talked about yet, let's throw them in. That brings us to Devious. Darius von Schneider, or Devious for short, was one of the top heels in OCCW. After an injury left him sidelined, he took to commentary and found he enjoyed it much better. He is a character I had a lot of design issues with. Originally, he was kind of modeled after a satanic leaf gecko. Then he was like an off-color leopard gecko, before kind of settling into being the axolotl form on the right. I should have grabbed like a still of him from like the comic pages I did, because I think that's like the only color stuff I did of him in that form. He was going to be the main antagonist one of the wrestling comic idea, where he kind of coerced Ashley into joining his side and joining his faction, coming out of retirement, so to speak. I had two sort of story arcs for Devious. First was like the leader of the heel faction in OCCW, which at the time was also called Black Rain, and it was actually also sort of an evil punk band. It was a big stable with like. There was going to be like a second story where he got challenged by like someone who took members of his faction. Yeah, kind of like the Misfit. But it was going to be after like the first like story concluded. There was going to be like I had ideas for like a second one where he basically got a redemption arc and got to challenge like some old comrades and stuff, and I didn't fully flesh out that story idea because I never did even finish like the first one. Anyways, next we have Jericho, is Devious's twin brother. Unlike his brother, Jericho plays face and is still active. He is married to Susie, who we get to in a bit. Jericho and Devious actually share like an interesting history as OCs. They were originally created as like the offspring of Azimuth and my ex, but we never actually fleshed them out. So I started trying to do stuff with them, like when we were doing like one of our Mutants and Masterminds campaigns with focusing on wizards. I was going to play a spellcasting wrestling bard, which was actually going to be Devious, but I ended up being the lady, and we had a secondary campaign where it was sort of a pseudo cyberpunk thing with Jericho being a kind of, since they were the sons of Azimuth, they were both elves, or half elves anyways, and Jericho, but he was like an elf that had a sort of Guyver unit type transformation thing. Again, there was some art I had for Jericho. This form of Jericho is inspired a lot by the wrestler Kid Bandit, who is and non-binary. Masculine form in women's clothing, kind of. Not really femboy, really, or anything, but Jericho was just kind of meant to be the good versus evil and stuff, and I just kind of struggled to have a place for him. Next we have Susie. Susie is a heel wrestler with OCCW. She was part of the stable led by Devious while he was still active. Susie herself is like one of my oldest OCs that I created way back in like the 80s. Originally she was kind of the semi-focus of this like very vague story I had. It was actually another sort of isekai thing where there was Earth, and then there was a parallel dimension called the Toon World, where people randomly got sucked into every now and then, and once in the Toon World, they became some sort of anthropomorphic creature, be it some sort of animal, some sort of object, or even a robot. And I honestly don't remember a lot of that, if there was much of a story to that whole thing. It was just me kind of making characters and being silly, because I was like in like my preteens and whatnot. And as I said before, there was a point where I just, for some random reason, decided I didn't want to draw Susie anymore and kind of replaced her with Cyan. After a while, I decided I wanted to have Susie again. I wanted to bring back Susie, so I did, and I kind of just wanted to, like a furry, I guess I wanted a furry with like the tattoos, because as logical as it is, it's kind of a neat idea, I think. And I ended up kind of giving her like the Browder together with Jericho have that kind of mixed couple sort of thing where it's like one character is a heel while the other is a face. Either of them actually interact. She doesn't really have a place right now, so she is in the sidelines, as it were. Big Mama May is OCCW's current world champion. As her name suggests, she is the league's mom figure who looks out for her fellow wrestlers. Funnily enough, May actually started out as a Pokemon. Like, before I started putting together the wrestling comic, I went through a thing where I had like a Pokemon trainer OC and was and like her own team of like anthropomorphic Pokemon. And in that team, May was a Nidoqueen. After a while, I decided I pulled away from that. I decided I wanted to try and make these Pokemon OCs into like non-Pokemon characters. We did like a few I think she was briefly a kangaroo too before I settled on mouse, but her character has not actually changed a lot. Even as a Pokemon, she was still a pro wrestler as like a side thing. And she was a champion. But yeah, May's story was in like the OCCW is she is the champion. She was going to train Talon and Ashley. Got frustrated when the two started losing constantly. Lashed out, took a heel turn. She could eventually feud with Talana for the championship. And that brings us to Coco. Coco is May's daughter. May wanted her to follow in her footsteps as a wrestler, but she would much rather be a chef. Coco does have an explosive right hook, though. Coco is a character created way back in my Tumblr days. A bunch of people made like these lab mice OCs. The criteria was lab mouse with a cookie name and some sort of simple power, and Coco was one of them. She was like one of the originals, and her power there was basically she could snap her fingers and cause explosions, with the intensity being based on how close the explosion was to her. After that whole thing kind of fell through. She just kind of existed until I decided I have two mice. Let's have a mother-daughter thing, and which is what we got. Coco's thing has always been like she wants to be the team chef. She wants to cook. Next we have Green Dragon. Green Dragon is a luchadora in OCW. She inherited name from the former Green Dragon. She is never seen without her mask. It was basically kind of a joke that she is called Green Dragon even though she herself isn't green. And then kind of inspired by the Dragon Zord from Power Rangers, which is piloted by the Green Ranger. Her main thing in the OCCW was that she would have a rivalry with a fully covered character called the White Tiger. Now, that's just another allusion to like what Power Rangers goes. Shtick with the White Tiger is that it would be like since they were fully covered, it would be a different wrestler underneath the mask every time. So you couldn't, other than body shape, you couldn't tell who was actually her opponent. It was just sort of a small little running gag for the OCCW world. She is based off a snake, but I can't remember what kind of. It was a blue something. Blue Racer, I think? Next, we have Taki. Tequila Taki Rose is the medic at OCCW. Used to be a wrestler under the name of Beezle Bufo. Yeah, Taki is a little strawberry rainbow dart frog. Or not rainbow dart, poison dart frog. She is another instance of Lee randomly making a character, then trying to fit her into a world. outside of like OCCW. I even joked with the idea of her being like a Spider-Man Sona. Honestly, I feel like I kind of want to go back to that, and because I feel like her Spider Frog outfit could use work. But yeah, she was basically, I wanted to try and make a poison dart frog OC, and we kind of went from there. Lanny Landrick. Landrick is a warrior who has mastered, air quotes, the art of controlling fire. His body still bears scars, though. Landrick is actually probably one of my oldest OCs, and he has been through a lot of changes. His original incarnation was a sort of a human in a red shirt, blue pants, and I think a red hat called Stretch, and he had Plastic Man powers. He was part of like the whole Teenager group thingy. I drew him in transforming into things like helicopters and ladders and stuff like that. In the early 90s, I kind of hit my kind of edgy phase and decided he needed a rebrand. So I kind of ditched this name Stretch and renamed him Lanny. He doesn't have Stretch powers. He has a sword and plays with fire, cause I'm an edgy teenager making edgy characters. Yeah, that he kind of just fell off for a long time. We hit the point where it was like I was in the make every character a fantasy character, and for that time he was sort of a member of the D&D doppelganger race, just this tall, gray-skinned and hairless dude that just kind of had a very grumpy look to his face. And I'm kind of sad I don't have like all this old art of these versions, because some of this is pre-internet days, and so the art may exist in physical form, but it's probably locked away, or it's stuffed away in binders somewhere that aren't easy to access. I'm really not sure what gave me the idea I can't remember what gave me the idea to make him into a snake. King Snake it is. For a time, he was going to be a member of like Devious's like faction in the OCCW comic, because every faction needs a big guy, and Lanny is over 7 feet tall. So there you go. After kind of moving away from the wrestling comic, I kind of decided to poke at like the old Lanny, where he just played with fire and stuff, which is where we are today. Well, I say today, but it's definitely been a couple years since I've drawn him, so he is definitely living in a sort of limbo at the moment of what I want to do with it. What, if anything, I want to do with him. Princess. Princess is a girl who likes to cosplay. That's essentially it. I thought it would be funny to make a pug girl that cosplayed other characters. And that's basically that is all her lore. That is everything. Just a pug girl to dress up in in cosplay. I actually do want to draw her. I do need to draw her again at some point. Yeah, she is for funsies. Next we have Annalise Galrithian. Annalise is Deladia's estranged sister. She became a Dullahan after a particularly nasty fight with her sister. She vows to kill Deladia, to unalive her. In the tabletop version with Deladia, with the Galrithians, the two were sisters, and it was decided who would gain Delnore's power in a fight between the two. She is one of those characters I cannot decide a canon out. I could never decide a canon outfit for. This outfit on the right here is actually from a Dress-Up-tober thing, I think, not last year, but the year before. The two were sisters and had a fight to see who would be the one to receive Delnore's power. At the time, Deladia said thought the best way to win is to kill. So she went for the throat, literally. And in order to keep their other daughter, she was raised back up as a Dullahan. Right now, she is someone I don't really know what to do with. She was never a part of the fantasy versions of the Deladia, and her existence in the kind of makes the story a bit awkward, so I'm still not quite sure what to do with it. Amelia or Amy for short, is a nurse with a Valley Girl attitude who loves kids and is friends with Taki. Honestly, this is another OC who I want to draw some more. I basically haven't drawn her past the original thing. Her whole creation was I wanted a scorpion girl. And that's it. Besides basically these two drawings, I haven't done anything with her. And I feel like that is a crime that needs to be fixed soon. Which is kind of why I put her on my my character bingo for next year. But yeah, she's just like this Valley Girl scorpion, you know. Alright, Stella is another native of the Netherrealm. She spends most of her time sleeping, only waking up to snack. Stella is an OC, is an adoptable I bought earlier this year. And I don't have a lot. This is pretty much the only time I've actually tried drawing her again. She is another OC that I'm because I think I'm still trying to figure out how to draw her. Because it was oh, this is a really cool thing, and I want to help out this artist. I want to be supportive of this artist. So it's I bought Stella, and now I'm still kind of trying to figure out what to do with her. Her original reference is definitely not Twitch safe. I had to edit this one just a tiny bit before I could put it here. Next, we have Joby. Joby is enhancement talent for OCCW. She works whatever side she needs to. Joby was the jobber for OCCW. You needed someone to look cool, send in Joby to get beat up. And she's got some of the scars to prove it. She's got some missing teeth, a couple bruises here and there, but she's willing to work for whoever to beat. As you can see, we are kind of going all over the place because I never expected to have this many, but I was determined to deliver. Yeah, she definitely loves her work. To drop another wrestling reference, she is like the Heath Slater of OCCW. She worked with all the legends. She works with all the legends, all the stars. She is the one you go to if you need to make someone look good. Next, we have Diva. Diva is a punk octopus, and I never figured out anything else more. That's really it. I think originally she was kind of like a short stack with where the tentacles were her hair instead of her legs, and she had normal little feet. But she is someone I just never did anything, but I still like the design. Macy is a diminutive rabbit that fancies herself a knight. She loves drinking. Macy was originally a tan lop-eared bunny that was part of another OC let's make things based on things bunch of animal characters based off elements. While she was a normal colored rabbit at the time, Macy was basically based around a rabbit paladin based around water who just loved drinking. And her original design is also one that it probably isn't very Twitch safe because she was a semi-nudist who used her long ears as covering as a top. And then a few years ago, there was an artist who was selling a bunch of bunny adoptables. Sadly, a lot of them weren't selling, so I decided to be supportive and buy one. Remember kids, support your artists. This form became Macy's new form. Admittedly, the colors were chosen by me because I was like, well, I don't think I've ever had a colored character before. Let's make her purple. So I now have a tiny purple bunny that's very poofy. And I'm not quite sure. She is another one that I'm not quite sure what to do with, if anything. Yeah, Aiden is one half of the tag team champions, Pain and Gain in OCCW. He writes the name of people he's pinned on his body. Yeah, that's about basically all I had for Aiden. There wasn't a lot I really like, cause I just didn't know what to do with. I was just making characters to like fit different kinds of themes and stuff like this. Like I wanted to have like a tag team champs. So I made a tag team. Because if Taylana and Ashley were going to be tag team champions themselves, they needed someone to fight for it. Yeah, and that's where Cage comes in, the other half of Pain and Gain. He lets his money and his fists do the talking. Cage himself is actually a kind of a redesign of someone that was in Azimuth's past. Like, he was the guy that Cage was the name of the man that kind of taught Azimuth the trade of being like a rogue slash treasure hunter sort of person. I like to read, and honestly, well, I don't think this is neither those Cages are related in any way. I just like reusing names if I make one that I really like. Tag team champions Cage and Avery, Pain and Gain. Next we have Ragnhilde, is a gnomish adventurer and Rihanna's sister in another timeline. Yeah, Ragnhilde was originally created as a sort of naughty OC. Like I used to be a part of a group that was like, hey, let's make characters for this theme, around this theme, and then never do anything with that. And she was supposed to be kind of the naughty adventurer type. But funnily enough, before I even started really drawing any like naughty stuff with her, I kind of got attached. And I started making lore because this was around the time that I had Rihanna as a gnome. So it was like Ragnhilde was the one that went out on adventures and told her little sister about them. Ragnhilde's whole thing is she was basically a sort of kangaroo styled gnome with like tan lines, big weapons, armor of varying amounts of coverage, and like she is currently in flux basically because it doesn't quite fit the timeline. This actually got a tag on Blue Sky. The first one got a explicit image tag from Blue Sky. The first one here. The image is supposed to be hunched over Delita, kind of protecting her from arrows of light and stuff like that. Mutt is a shadow dog that was Delita's companion in her tabletop RPG version. He may still be around. That is, yeah. And it's basically that as I said in her segment, where it's like he was a shadow dog that kind of followed her in her shadow, sort of. Maybe he still is in her shadow, and that's why she has the dog ears and tail. Maybe that is actually part of her. I don't know yet. This next one would have been way, way higher on the list if I had known it was going to go this long. Lilith is a vampire who was turned against her will and abandoned by her sire as a sick joke. She was picked up by an agency that taught her how to hunt vampires, but really, she just wants to play in a band and find happiness. Yeah, if I had known this post would have gone on as long as it did, I would have definitely posted her way sooner, because she is such a dear part for OC of mine. She was a character in a modern D20 D&D 3rd edition hybrid game. I can't remember if it was 3rd edition or 3.5. And her story was she was a vampire turned against her will. She was picked up by an agency and taught to basically be a vampire cleaner. It was basically like she was working for the supernatural MIB, and existed on a world that is present day Earth, but monsters and such exist, but they are hidden from human eyes by a magical thing called the Veil, and only certain people are able to perceive the Veil. As the game went on, it turned out that the agency she worked for was not so good, did not have so good intentions, so her group kind of brought it down. The details are unclear because one of the members is a psychic and kind of erased everyone's memory of the time of what happened in order to allow everyone to kind of start over. Lilith was able to live a normal life, pretend to live a normal life with her old bandmates until she was picked up by another guy who had the desire to tear down the Veil and bring everyone together. And it was through him that she actually learned to kind of regain human empathy and actually start living as fully as a person. And she kind of saw him as her sort of surrogate sire, because he actually looked after her. Sadly, the game ended before there was any sort of conclusion to the storyline of the whole overarching storyline. And that did leave a big hole in my soul, because I was really attached to this character. And for years I tried figuring out different ways to give her a story. And one of those things was that she had a childhood crush named Chaz Takashi, who was a foreign exchange student in her school when she was still human. And after the game ended, she kind of formed a group with him and some other folks, and eventually confronted her sire and kind of found happiness and all that. And then there was another version where I kind of figured out what the outcome would have been if the original group had managed to tear down the Veil. And that is not a good one. Supernatural creatures use the existence of the Veil as sort of protection themselves. These people were now exposed as the creatures they were, and suddenly Bob and Mindy down the street are actually a couple of bugbears or whatever. Even though Mindy does make a really good souffle, they're still monsters. They're eek! And it basically started a war between humans and non-human. And this is actually where things get interesting, because it kind of ties that game world into Andorra. Because the war between the humans and non-humans ended with a peace treaty between 12 individuals who kind of came together and basically formed a new kind of world order. The 12 were elevated as gods, and eventually Andorra was formed. again, so they let the god status get to their heads and kind of started infighting until, and to a degree, they some still do exist. But in any case, Lilith was also among one of those people that helped kind of bring an end to the war, and she had the opportunity to basically become a goddess, but she denied it. In like the current timeline of Andorra, she exists as a multi-thousand-year-old vampire, kind of living alone in her castle, because she has just felt betrayed by humanity for too many times and just wants to be alone now. She would be a sort of provider of MacGuffins and stuff for the party. But again, I'm not sure, because again, the world of Andorra as a whole is kind of in a state of upheaval, because I am finally kind of trying to put a concrete effort into like getting the world into a stable place where I can tell a story. Whether Lilith is a part of that story or not is still up in the air, but she definitely stands as one of like my favorite OCs. Not OCs, game characters, and like she is actually like the first character that I used to kind of explore androgyny, the idea of androgyny, because she is female, she identifies as female, but she dresses like a guy. Her original description was basically a gender-bent Reno from Final Fantasy VII. Same build and all. I have changed her. She has changed a bit. This is actually the more recent pictures of her I've done. Cause I did once draw her as a sort of Ziggy Stardust thing. Abellego is a tinkerer that would sell his abilities to the highest bidder. He has an animated doll that acts as his secretary, housekeeper, bodyguard. Her name is Kevin. Alright, Abellego was originally one of the main antagonists for the original Andorra story. He was basically the guy controlling the portal that would lead to the Nether Realm, where Emperor Galbraith was. And there was like this whole idea where he used the portal I had like this idea where he actually sent Azimuth through the portal, and he kind of would go on this dimension hopping sort of adventure. I kind of wish I had actually drawn any of that, but because it was such a neat idea in my head. Because he would go to like Azimuth in Batman world, Azimuth in Dragon Ball Z world. I'm sure I know I had like other places he went, but it's like I can't remember anymore. But this particular version of Abellego is actually visually is from a tabletop again, because I don't know what it is, but with like my old group, I like just taking old OCs and trying to turn them into tabletop characters in an effort to try and flesh out their personality and background. And that's kind of what I did with Abellego here. He was a member of the Winter Court. He was a she of the Summer Court. And he had a little doll named Kevin because he wanted to name her after a human, but didn't really understand human naming conventions. In fact, one of his shticks was supposed to be like, he confused like common expressions and idioms. I was never able to really deliver that, so that aspect kind of dropped. There was a whole story where it was like, his story in the tabletop game was that he was basically in this kind of loop where he was trying to resurrect his sister, which was pretty hard because it is very hard to actually kill a member of the court, one of the courts. So when a member of the fairy courts dies, they die, and he just couldn't accept that. So he was kind of in this loop of like almost like a loop of rebirth of himself, while he tried to figure out how he could revive her. He would just kind of have he had this kind of spell on himself that would reset things if certain conditions weren't met, and he would just keep trying and trying again until he figured out how to finally revive his sister. In fact, knowledge of reviving his sister was actually like one of the things that was locked away from him, because it had to come, because he didn't want to be driven by that. He needed to figure out how to get to that conclusion. Where Abellego sits in the current timeline is unknown. Strawberry Angel is another character from what I made with, along with Coco. He was a lab mouse whose power was flight. He was just a mouse with little feathery wings. Angel is an anthropomorphic lab mouse who was experimented on and given wings. He is kind of a bird brain. That is really it. I did have like the idea of him being a side character in the OCCW thing, where the wings were just tattoos on his back, and it didn't really pan out. He didn't really have a lot going for him, and he was basically the himbo. Paige is my Pokemon trainer Sona, OC. A delinquent type, she likes cute Pokemon. Yeah, she was Pokemon May's trainer. I didn't really think too much on her character. I was just making an OC based kind of loosely on the delinquent trainer type. And I don't know where I got the name Paige, but I just started naming when I wasn't naming them Rihanna. Carla Ashley Sinclair. Carla is a gamer girl that wants to be a professional streamer. Carla is me trying to revamp a character from like old roleplay. In the roleplay, she was like a college student that was a gamer. That was really all there was to her, minus like the weird kind of story stuff I did with with my ex and stuff like that. And I had originally recreated her as sort of like the best friend of Taylana in the wrestling comic. And like there came a point where I realized she was kind of an aspect of me in my kind of uncertainty of gender type thing, the gender dysphoria and stuff like that. And it felt too close to home, kind of having her as like one of the main characters of the comic. So she was kind of retconned out and kind of set on the sidelines for a bit when I thought I should combine her with Rihanna and Kaylin, but now she is separate again and she exists as a character, but I don't know to what extent, really. And honestly, that is gonna be as I've probably said that a lot, because I have lots of characters. I didn't mention it, but like with the Ladia's family, her mother is Corin, her father is Andros, she had an uncle, Casterix, she has her sister, she has a grandmother. I don't have art for any of those, any of the people that I haven't already shown, but it's like, some of these there's just so many characters, and it gets hard figuring out what to do with them all, but I think it's important to realize it's okay to like keep revising characters, keep revising them. If it doesn't work, if it's not something you're happy with, change it. it doesn't matter if it's like, if it part of who you are, change, and it doesn't feel right, change it. Don't wait for like the right moment, like, oh, it might, I don't want to ruin my branding, I don't want to do this. No, if there's an aspect of a character that is making you unhappy, change it. It is your right as its creator. Because this is your creation. You need to make what makes you happy. Make what makes you happy. Be what makes you happy. And I do want Ashley to be happy. Well, Carla. Ashley is her stage name. So, and I hopefully will do something with her in the future. Heck, she may even appear in Andorra because as a gamer, she plays MMOs, and she likes to be the cleric. Midnight is actually a cheat. This is like the only drawing I've done of them ever. Like, and I did it like right before I posted this. Midnight, another minion of Deleta, more to come. I'm just gonna throw this out there. This Midnight was the kind of stage name for Susie. And for a very brief time, I did transform her into a cat. I was being lazy about wanting to draw her hair. I didn't want to make her bald. So, this is another reuse of the name. Will it be the same thing as what the Cat Susie was? I don't know yet. But this is basically an idea that is percolating. Like, it is like, this is something I want to pursue, and so I am putting it on the list. And, well, that's just it. We'll see if and when this develops, really. Potato! Potato is a pretty. He always wears a fez. I'm not sure which game it was, but I'm pretty sure, like, in one of the random name generator things, Potato came up while I was making a printy. And I decided, I will always have a printy named Potato. And I have. Every Disgaea game that has printies you could name, I have had Potato. CJ. CJ is the name of a man in flux. He is either a big burly human, or a big burly bird. Maybe a werebird? He doesn't talk much. Apparently he knows martial arts. Yeah. That's kind of where he is. CJ as a bird is like another one of my oldest OCs. Which I made around when I made like Susie and Lanny. Part of this whole teenager thing. Only his original species was Dodo. I don't know why, but for some reason I decided I wanted to kind of make him more towards a bearded vulture. For whatever reason. But there was a point where it's like I was trying to recreate characters and I kind of made him into a human. And during that time as a human, he was kind of the Ninja Brian to Azzy's Danny Sexbang. He was kind of like he was Azimuth's silent guardian that was equal parts protector and source of violence. And he may have had a thing with Rihanna, because, tiny gnome girl and giant bear of a man. I have my tastes. But yes, he never really talked. He didn't talk a lot. Or if at all. And then, yeah, there was more, but yeah, as human, there was more than a few occasions where he would just stab Azzy. Knives of healing. When I kind of brought him back to his bird form, he was going to appear in there was an idea to bring him into OCCW as, like, basically as Vi's bodyguard. Again, kind of bringing the big and small thing there. Toady Mushi. Toady Mushi is My Hero Academia OC. Back when her quirk is mushrooms, I made her before Kinoko was introduced. I'm amazing. My Hero Act first came out. Artists all over were making their own sort of OCs, and I decided to make Toadie. Then Group B was introduced, and one of the members had mushroom powers too. It's like, fuck! I basically abandoned Toadie. Honestly, I don't think I really had anything for her anyways. Maddie is a shiny Clefairy that dreams of being a magical girl. Yeah, another of the Page's Pokemon team. My Pokemon team was basically made of Pokemon I like, and I like the Nido series, Clefairy. She's one I kind of want. She is kind of one I wanted to keep. There was a point where I drew her as a as a corgi once, and just to see if I liked it, and I thought it was kind of cute, but again, I kind of like her more as a Clefairy, even if I don't draw her anymore. I made corgi version hair pink because it was like, I think my reasoning was I have so many characters with green hair. I'll just give her pink to pay homage to the Clefairy lineage. I do kind of like the fit for the Clefairy thing. Like, her wings come from the form of like a little backpack. Yeah. At this point, I think I was just kind of pulling things out of the ether because Relia was my Skyrim Argonian character, and she became a vampire. I have never finished the main story of Skyrim. But yeah, she was a vampire. Yeah, she was an Argonian vampire who was also I think she was also a member of the Dark Brotherhood. Raleigh was originally a kind of animal-eared girl. I wanted to try something unique, and so I made an animal-eared girl pangolin. And her thing was she was a pro wrestler. After like numerous draws, she didn't feel right. Like, no matter how much I tried to draw her as an animal-eared girl, it just didn't look right, so I went full furry. I made her a full pangolin. And she is the face commentator for OCCW. The face commentator to Devious's heel commentary. She also acts as an interviewer at times. Gregory Sapriano. Sapriano is a power mimic superhero, able to copy the powers of anyone he touches. Yeah, he was my second basically foray into mutants and masterminds. I guess he kind of borrows from another like mutant character. Except unlike Rogue, he can't fly, and his touch isn't debilitating. He's pretty good at parkour though. He was basically kind of a charismatic gangster type turned hero. He even had his own sort of like mini gang of hoods that kind of followed him around near the end. He also got to marry the goddess Hell, Chaz Takashi, who I mentioned earlier. Chaz Takashi, television exorcist, was Lilith's love interest until he was killed in a battle with her sire. And Chaz himself is actually a recreation, is like taking the name from an old OC. Cause in my like teenagers type era, I had a Dragonfly character named Chaz. Rapping Chaz. He was basically like a very like late 80s, early 90s rapper motif with like a necklace with like the big clock and all that stuff. The backwards hat, all it. And this Chaz is nothing like that Chaz, so they are separate characters. This isn't just like a recreation. I consider those two separate characters. Chaz was a television exorcist who kind of acted as Lilith's love interest. Childhood crush and kind of a link to humanity and stuff like that. And that brings us to the final one, the cursed OC for reaching 50, Ronnie Chan. Okay, This is the depths of my insanity. I make no apologies. I give you Rane-chan. She is loving it. I have worked for the Arches, and in a moment of insanity, I made a female Ronald McDonald. I made a naughty clown girl. And I have no excuses. She exists, and I created her, and now you have been cursed with that knowledge and this imagery. Isn't that a high point to end this all on? Yeah, the second image of her was definitely suggestive, which is why I chose a sketch instead for this presentation. I want to thank you all for joining me today. This has been something, hasn't it? I mean, that is 50 of my OCs. Made tons of OCs over the years. I have been making OCs for like 35 plus years now, and some have finished stories, some have continuing stories, some have no stories, and that's okay. If you missed any of this and you want to hear me ramble more, the VOD will be available, and I'll probably talk to someone into editing it to see if I make things more concise and less, just so this whole thing lives on, because Twitch VODs aren't forever. So, and I do want to preserve this, so it will probably be uploaded somewhere in the future at some point. But it will exist as a VOD for if you missed anything. Thank you all for joining me today, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.